Fox Oldies, 98.9, 105.3, WGNY FM in New York. I'm Bob O on a fun day Saturday morning, and my very special guest that I look so much forward to talking to is Megan with Planning Ahead. Megan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, just absolutely fantastic, to be honest with you. The weather is just beautiful.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it myself. It's a little cooler. That's really great.
It is, really. It won't be too much longer before we start getting out the sweaters, right?
I know. It's happening fast.
It is. Megan, give us your contact number and the name of your firm that you're a partner with.
Sure. My name's Megan Conroy. I'm a partner at Blustein, Shapiro, Frank, and Barone, and we're in Goshen, New York. The phone number there is 845-291-0011. We also have a website. It's mid-hudsonlaw.com.
All right. Megan, you know, we've been discussing about Uncle Joe for the past couple of months, and there seems like there's always something going on with Uncle Joe's estate. And the executor now of who Uncle Joe wanted to be an executor of his last will and estate. Now there seems to be a problem with Uncle Joe's executor prolonging on things. In other words, not really getting back to the people that Uncle Joe left things for. What would be the reason for that, and what can be done?
Sure. So there can be a lot of reasons for that. And so what's interesting about our sort of case study that we have here is that we're following it in real time. It's drawn out over all these months, and that is actually what happens in real life whenever we do have what's known as a probate estate. So typically when the assets were owned in the decedent's name all by themselves, there's no joint owner, there's no beneficiary directly on the asset, the will controls the disposition of the estate. The will has to be submitted to the court for approval, and that's when the court appoints an executor. And the executor has the job of collecting the assets, determining what debts exist, if there are any, and then making sure that everyone gets paid accordingly. So we typically will find that that process is prolonged. It usually lasts at least a year locally, and sometimes a lot longer than that, depending on what the situation is. The executor has to make sure that all of the debts are paid, as long as the debts were submitted timely. They're getting paid first before any funds are distributed to beneficiaries. So sometimes that can cause delay. Sometimes when there's issues with having the executor appointed, like in Uncle Joe's case study that we've been sort of following and coming up with all along, there were issues with the appointment of executors and things like that. That draws it out. And so now that the executor is finally appointed, what they need to do is make sure that they have all of the figures correct, because they are responsible. They're a fiduciary on behalf of the estate. So they really need to make sure those numbers are looking good. The figures are right. They have all the assets collected. The debts are paid. They're holding enough money back for additional expenses that could come up, like tax returns that have to get filed in the following year after the estate is closed out. So there's actually a lot that goes into it, which tends to draw out the process. And then it's frustrating to the beneficiaries when there's not a lot of communication from the executor to the beneficiary so that the beneficiary knows what to expect or when they should expect the next steps, the payments, things of that nature. So typically when the executor is putting things off, it's because there's a lot of things that are happening in the background. Now, if a beneficiary doesn't feel like that's the case, they feel like maybe the executor is not really doing their job as diligently as they should be, or there might be something funny going on, then typically the beneficiary is going to want to retain an attorney for themselves so that the attorney can file paperwork with the court, just letting the court know, hey, you know, something might be going on here. We want a status of the estate. We're entitled to know about what's happening, what the details of the assets and the debts are. So sometimes to facilitate that communication, the beneficiary needs to hire an attorney of their own to help them along through the process.
Wow. Now, would that hiring of an attorney from the executor, that would cost extra money, would it not, and something not to be taken into accounted for?
Sure, yeah. So it would generally cost the beneficiary some money to have that representation. And then depending on what the court determines is going on, maybe the beneficiary can have the estate pay the attorney fees and things like that. So there's going to be some requests that are made there. But yes, there is generally expenses associated with needing to hire the attorney to represent the beneficiary. And so the first thing is the beneficiary should try to get in touch with the executor individually to see if it's something that maybe I'm just not asking the right questions. Can you please explain to me what's going on? If they're still not getting good responses there, it's worth having an attorney to kind of get that information.
Oh, wow. So that really could, in detail, create a lot of messy situations, could it not?
Sure, it could. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why, kind of going back in time, Uncle Joe hopefully was advised by his attorney during his lifetime in choosing that executor. It comes back to really making sure you're choosing the appropriate person to serve in that position, because it is a lot of work. The person who you choose as your executor should be pretty good at paperwork. They should be a self-starter in that they know, I need to take care of these tasks. I don't want to just sit around and let them languish, right? So they'll pick up the phone or start to take care of items that they know need to be done, or at least know to ask questions. And so that way we can make sure that things are running smoothly. Like I said, probate is inherently a long process, which is frustrating, but choosing the right executor can make sure that it's taking as little time as possible.
Now, an executor of someone's estate, they're also entitled to what, a 10% increase in collecting?
Yep, so the executor is entitled to a commission, and the commission is structured typically in the state statutes. So depending on the state where the estate is being probated, that state law is going to determine what the maximum commission is going to be. And in New York, it's sort of a reverse sliding scale. It's a larger percentage on a smaller value of assets, and then the percentage slowly reduces for larger value of assets. And there's calculators and things online that you can kind of punch those numbers in and get a pretty close idea of what the commission is going to be. And the executor can elect to take that full commission, take something less than the full commission, or they can waive their commission completely.
Right.
If the executor takes any portion of the commission, that is income because they're being paid to do a job. So that's income to them, and they typically will want to report that on their income tax return when they file.
So it's very, very important that when you make out your last will and testament, you have an executor of that last will and testament that really knows the ins and outs of things, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe they don't have a legal background. That's okay. Most people don't. But they need to be at least savvy enough to say, you know what, I'm not sure. Let me ask, let me address this, let me get the paperwork going or make the call.
So if you're asked to be an executor of a last will and testament, you have a lot of questions to ask, I would assume, correct?
Absolutely. It's going to be a position that works very closely with attorneys, maybe accountants, because there's some tax filings involved. And typically the executor is not a lawyer themselves and not an accountant themselves. And so they'll need to work closely with those professionals to make sure that the job is getting done.
Wow. So that's why I personally understand why, and due to my brother's last will and testament, a couple of people turned down the judge who the judge picked to be an executor of his estate.
Sure. It's a big undertaking. It's a lot of work. I'm sure a lot of our listeners either have seen that or experienced it firsthand. And when you're doing your planning, you're doing your last will and testament or even trust planning with your attorney, it's important that the attorney take the time to make sure that you're selecting a person that you really feel can do this job. And like we've talked about on previous conversations, would generally want to have several people picked in an order of succession because you want to give that first, second, or even third person the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm honored, but I'm not in a position in my life where I can do all of these things.
Wow. So when somebody comes into your office and speaks to you personally about their last will and testament, how many choices do they have to become an executor of that last will and estate?
A person that's creating their will can designate as many people as they want in the executor position. Often it's recommended that they designate them in an order of succession. Sometimes people will elect to have co-executors, two people on at the same time, and that way they feel like maybe the work is spread out amongst more individuals. So it's really going to be a discussion when my clients come in to see me. It's a discussion of, why are you choosing this person? Do you feel that they're capable? What does their life look like today, right? Because we can only plan for what our lives look like right now. If you pass tomorrow, what would happen? And so if you tell me that this person's wonderful and very smart and very diligent, but they have a really stressful job and they work round the clock, nights, weekends, and everything else, right? I'm going to point out to them, well, maybe that's not the person, because how will they have time to do this on top of everything else? So that's part of the conversation, is talking about those other people that you might be designating, not just yourself.
So if someone walks into your office and sits down with you, and the person that's making out his or her last will and testament puts down like 5 people, you would interview those individuals?
I don't interview the individuals, but I talk to my client about, who are these people to you? Why are you selecting them? What do they do for a living? Do you think they make good decisions? Or are they the kind of person that's not great at making decisions? Maybe they're nervous to make a decision, and so they take a lot of time to do it, or they procrastinate. Have they exhibited that they're good with financial decisions, right? They might not be financial advisors or accountants, and that's okay, but when you look at them, do you find that they spend their money in ways that maybe you wouldn't necessarily do for yourself, right? You don't agree with their financial decisions.
Right.
Or do you feel that they're very financially sound? So I'm going to ask the client what their perspective is of those people that they're selecting.
Wow, now I know why I was never picked to be an executor of my brother's last will and estate. Wow, that is really valuable information. And if you would, Megan, please give out your contact information.
Sure. So the phone number there at the firm is going to be 845-291-0011. And then we have a website. It's www.mid-hudsonlaw.com.
There's an awful lot of things that people really need to think about before they make out their last will and testament and put down their executive choices. That's for darn sure. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, boy, now I really know why my brother never picked me. That's for sure, because I don't fit any one of those criterias at all. Believe me, I really don't. Now, what else goes on with the last will and testament, Megan?
So in your will, right, you're describing not only who's in charge, but how to distribute assets, who you want the assets to go to, and how they should get to that individual. And so a big part of the conversation that I have with my clients is, okay, you know who your beneficiaries should be, right? You have a few people in mind that you picked. Maybe it's kids or siblings or charities or anybody else. How do we want these funds, after you pass away, to arrive at this individual? Do we have any concerns about the individual and their own financial decision-making, especially when we're talking about children? Parents will often be a little more opinionated in who their child has married. Maybe they love their in-laws. Maybe they don't especially like their son-in-law or daughter-in-law. Maybe they find that their child doesn't manage finances the way they wish their child did. Maybe their child has fallen on some hard times, even as an adult. They can't keep a job, or they have some issues with addiction. And so when we talk about our beneficiaries, we're not just slipping names into some blank lines. We're saying, who is this person? And when they get this inheritance, are they going to be able to manage this inheritance in a way that you feel comfortable with? So often my clients, in their planning, will actually create some protections for their beneficiaries, whether it's in a will or maybe the client elected to do a trust for themselves. They'll set up beneficiary trusts within their will or their trust instrument. And by doing that, that creates some protection for whoever their beneficiary might be. Often children, but not always. Sometimes, like I said, it's siblings, dear friends, even pets can be beneficiaries.
Wow.
Yeah, we often will do pet trusts for those people who do have pets. Maybe it's because the client has young children and they know if this happened tomorrow, my kids can't take care of my pets. I need to count on someone else to do it. Or maybe they just don't have anybody else and they trust one particular person with their pets. So they'll say, my pet should go to this person, and I'll allocate some sum of money, maybe $5,000, so that that person is not put out. They have money to take care of the pet now that I've burdened them with that. So there's a lot of planning opportunities that we can build into a will or a trust for our beneficiaries.
You know, I can remember several times in the news doing the job that I do here where I see $17 million being left to kitty kit. What happens to that? Oh, my gosh.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, those situations are a little more rare. They certainly, when it's a large sum of money like that, they're going to get a lot more media attention. But yes, we have many, many clients that maybe they never had children. Their pets are their babies, so to speak. Or, they're just really worried about what will happen to their cat, their dog, their bird, their lizard, whatever it is after they pass away. And so when we set up a pet trust, we're designating who will manage the funds for that pet and who will be the custodian, the physical keeper of the pet. And it can be the same person or it could be two different people. And so that's part of the discussion as well.
I've always figured that when I read a story like that, these people that passed away and left their pets $17 million, they got to be a little off, if you understand my meaning of that.
It could be. Yeah, sure. There is some question about, does any pet need that amount of funds for their care? Sometimes it is sort of a backward way of telling their family, you know what, I didn't appreciate our relationship during my lifetime, and so it's all going to the pet instead. So, there's a lot of interesting reasons that people can make that decision.
And that's when the lawsuits start, right?
Could be. Certainly when there's family members that were left out in favor of the cat.
That is just unbelievable. So when you fill out a last will and testament, that is the law right there, is it not, when you do that?
Sure. When you complete your estate plan, whether it's your last will and testament or a trust or any other variation, ultimately that is the thing that should be upheld by the court. Now, a lot goes into it, right? You have to have a certain level of capacity when you complete the document. So that's part of my job, assessing a client to make sure that when I'm speaking to them, do they seem to be understanding what it is we're talking about, the gravity of the situation? Do they generally have an idea of what assets they own, how much money they have? If they make this selection, do they realize what the implications are? So that's why it's really important that when you complete your will, it's not just some fillable form. It's a discussion, because that discussion goes to defending the will down the road if someone did contest it. If someone said, this wasn't right, this person was not in their right mind at the time they completed it, I would be the person to say, I spoke with them, and I believe they were in their right mind. Maybe you're not happy with the decision, but this is what they wanted.
Wow, that is just amazing on how that all works. Believe me, $17 million left to Uncle Joe's kitty cat. Wow.
Yeah. And so typically in something like that, there's going to be a provision that describes what happens when the cat eventually passes away. Is there a successor level of beneficiaries? Maybe it gets donated to a charity thereafter or goes to some individuals. So it usually doesn't stay with the cat forever, because obviously that cat will pass someday and likely wouldn't pass it on to the cat's baby.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing when you really think about it, because there is an awful lot of room for protesting about that type of last will and testament, is there not?
Sure. It really depends on who the decedent, the person who created the will, who they leave behind.
Wow.
Maybe they were sort of the last surviving sibling in a family and had no children and no nieces and nephews, and there really isn't anybody else. And so then certainly more distant relatives would come out of the woodwork and probably contest just to see if they can get anything. But that kind of removes them from any significant level of standing.
Wow. And then, of course, the person that's going to take care of the kitty, if I may say so, has to be really up to snuff, too, yes?
Sure, yeah. And again, going back to who you choose for your different positions, you want to make sure that you're selecting the right people. If you have a really hyper, say, dog of some kind, and then you choose someone who's not very active, maybe feeble or older themselves, and they wouldn't be able to take on this kind of a dog, that's probably not a good fit.
Wow. And, of course, you and your office would definitely interview that person that's been left in charge of that cat or dog, yes?
Well, typically we would have some interaction with them after the person who created the will, after they pass away, because we need to be able to explain to them what their responsibilities are, what's expected of them, what the documents say. So while we don't have a final say in those kinds of things, usually we will end up interacting with them.
Wow, that is just amazing. And that's where all you guys come in, and girls, excuse me, and take care of business and get right down to the needle and threading that through the little eye that you need to do. And that's why you guys are so wonderful at what you do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But, I mean, that can be really nerve-wracking, though, I'm assuming, yes?
Sure. Probably more nerve-wracking for the people going through it than anybody else. But, yeah, it comes with a fair bit of stress.
Wow. And, I mean, that's where you guys cross your T's, dot your I's, and being the wonderful law firm that you are. And the other thing is, too, that I highly recommend anyone that's filling out a last will and testament to go to you, because you really need a great lawyer, correct?
I do think that the attorney that you have is very important in making sure that whatever your wishes are, they're properly carried out after the fact. This isn't something that you want to leave up to chance. This is something you want to make sure is done correctly. And as you've pointed out today and in other conversations, you want to make sure that it's done correctly, not only for yourself and your own wishes, but for those people that you're leaving behind, whether they're beneficiaries expecting to receive something. You want to make sure that they actually get that and they get it in the way you've described and they get it as quickly as possible, or even your helpers, right? You want to try to make their job as easy as possible. And a lot of that is done by making sure the plan is set up correctly at the outset.
That's why you need such a great attorney like you and your law firm to really buckle down and ask the right questions to a person that walks into your office and wants to fill out a last will and testament. Correct, Megan?
Yes, yeah, I totally appreciate that, and I agree that a very good attorney is important. If it's me, I would love to be that attorney. I will tell you our process involves at least 3 meetings when someone calls us and says, I need to set up a plan, right? Typically they say, I need a will, or I've heard about a trust and I want some information. So for the first steps there, they would set up an initial meeting where we have a long discussion. That one usually lasts about 90 minutes. Then we would set up a second meeting where we have a more detailed discussion. That one can go up to 3 hours. And then the next meeting is usually where I have the documents drafted. We review them together, and then the person signs at the third meeting. And that one is usually another 3 hours. So we take a lot of time to go through that client's situation to make sure this is the right choice for them.
And, you know, the other thing that I love about your law firm is that you have, what are they called again? A daily work
Yep, we do workshops.
Yeah, workshop. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, so every other month I'll host a free workshop. We do them in person. We used to do them online by Zoom or whatever other web service, but now they're mostly in person, and they're free, open to the public. They're every other month. Our next one is going to be October 14th.
Oh,
That's
wow.
actually going to be the last one for the year because then we get into the holidays and it's a little trickier. So October 14th, I'll have an in-person workshop at my office. It's free, but because we do it in person, seating is a little bit limited, so you have to make a reservation.
And how do the people go about doing that, making a reservation, Megan?
Sure, that can be done right online on our website, so mid-hudsonlaw.com, or they can call the office at 845-291-0011, and they can book that spot.
And I know the past couple of workshops you had, seating, you had to go into sort of like a panic mode and get more chairs for people to be able to sit down and get involved in this workshop.
We did. We had to pull in a few extra chairs for some folks because we try not to turn people away, especially because we do the workshops every other month, so we don't want people to feel like they're not going to get this information. So we will try to accommodate where we can, but ultimately the room only fits so many people.
and you know, it really scared me when you said your last workshop is going to be October 24th before the holidays. Oh, my gosh. The holidays. They're almost on top of us, aren't they?
I know. It's coming up fast.
It really is. And, you know, one thing my mom always told me, and I've stressed this enough on my radio shows, my mom once told me, and it was a shock to me because I never heard it before, that the older you get, you're going to wonder where your last 10 years of your life went.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, time goes faster and faster, right?
It does. It seems to, doesn't it? Wow. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Before you know it, I'm going to be having my leaf blower out there, blowing up all the leaves. I can't believe it because my wife actually had me start putting up fall decorations in the house. Can you believe that? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have some ceramic trucks in the back of the pickup beds are all piled up with pumpkins. She had her she had her longer burger baskets out, and she made all types of fall decorations in it and saying, I want this one over here, I want that one over there, put your truck over here. Yeah, and all I could do was just say, yes, dear, yes, dear.
Well,
yes,
that's
dear.
right. That's a smart man.
So, you know, the holidays, really, whether you want to admit it or not, they are definitely upon us. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Coming up fast. It sounds like your wife really likes the fall, though.
Oh, she does. She really does. And she loves going out on the front deck, sitting, looking at all the leaves and the beech nuts falling from the beech nut tree, which make a mess all over the yard. And she loves watching all that stuff. Megan, I can't thank you enough for your personal and professional time here with us with Planning Ahead. And I look so much forward to talking to you in the month of September as well as October. And then before you know it, the holidays are here with turkey and stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, the creamed onions, all of that good stuff. And just when
so you're a Thanksgiving guy then.
Yeah, I am. And we all try to lose weight, even during football season. Right. That works. Megan, again, thank you so much for your time. And if you wouldn't mind, please, give us your information, your contact information.
Sure. So my name's Megan Conroy. My phone number, 845-291-0011. Our website is mid-hudsonlaw.com.
And we want to let people know again in advance that your last workshop is going to be what, October 24th?
It's October 14th, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. October 14th. Wow, I can't believe that. Before the holidays. Wow. Wow. I can't wait till we meet again, Megan. And again, I thank you so very much for all your professional and personal time you take with us right here on a Fox Fun Day Saturday morning on Fox Oldies 98.9.
Thanks, Bobo.